I knocked my archenemy Mark crazy. He fucking makes me take full responsibility. That night, my archenemy Mark climbed into my bed. I looked disgusted and said, "Mark, you hit your head and made me stupid, how can you still do it?" Mark turned over and pressed me under him. The little head was ready to go, but the big head was confused. What should I do next? I smiled, bit Mark's ear, and exhaled, deep, in, shallow, out, understand? The story is about to begin. If you like it, remember to like and follow. I ordered a top male model named Robert at the bar. Robert is 188 centimeters tall and only 18 years old. He has broad shoulders and a narrow waist, with well-defined muscles and looks quite strong. I whistled, preparing to take the young male model Robert to the top of the mountain to enjoy the breeze and chat about our ideals in life. Unexpectedly, at the corner of the basement, I met my archenemy, Mark. Mark was hugging a young model, talking and laughing. I held the little male model Robert's arm and touched him all over. We all had a bright future if Mark hadn't gone crazy and suddenly stood in front of me. Mark's eyes swept over the taut abdominal muscles of the young male model Robert, and a sarcastic smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. "TSK. Linda, your vision is still so bad. It's obvious that he took too much medicine, he must be very weak, right?" I glanced at the turbulent waves of the young model in Mark's arms, and coldly retorted, "It's better than Mark's boss's margarine, it's all technology and hard work." Mark's face darkened instantly. Mark let go of the girl's hand and took a step forward, almost getting close to me. "You're still so poisonous." I glared back at him without showing any weakness. "Same here, your mouth still stinks." The air was filled with a strong smell of gunpowder. The young male model Robert seemed to have noticed something and moved closer to me. Mark saw this and became even angrier. He gritted his teeth and said, "How sincere do you think this pretty boy is? He's just after your money." I chuckled and dug my fingers into the boy's lower back, causing his young muscles to tense suddenly. "What's wrong with money? At least he's young, handsome, and capable." I deliberately emphasized the word capable. "Mark, did you drink too much fake wine today? Why are you acting crazy in front of me?" The young model beside him tugged at his sleeve. "Boss Mark, let's go first." Mark pulled his hand back abruptly. "You go first." The young model was stunned for a moment and her eyes turned red instantly, but she didn't dare to refute. She could only bite her lip and walk away, looking back every few steps. "Why are you still here?" Mark stared at the young male model Robert with an unfriendly tone. "None of your business?" I sneered and tightened my arm around the little male model Robert. "Let's go to my sister's house and watch Xiaomi do a backflip." The young male model Robert looked at Mark provocatively and followed me to the car. When we passed by each other, I heard Mark gnashing his teeth and saying, "Linda, you are awesome." I didn't look back, I just threw the car keys to the little male model Robert. "You drive." Through the car window, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Mark is still standing there. The light cast a dim shadow on his face, stretching his slender figure. I couldn't help but curl the corners of my mouth, and my mood inexplicably improved. The bastard finally got his comeuppance. Just when the car was about to drive out of the basement, Mark suddenly appeared in front of my car. "Asshole! Is he crazy?" the young male model Robert exclaimed and slammed on the brakes. The harsh sound of brakes echoed in the quiet garage, but it was still too late. Mark's figure enlarged in front of the windshield, and with a bang, the car body vibrated slightly. "Mark!" I unbuckled my seatbelt in a panic, my fingers were shaking. Mark fell to the ground peacefully, his eyes closed, motionless. "Mark? Wake up." I squatted down and patted Mark's face. Mark's skin was cool and unresponsive. My heart was pounding and my head was buzzing. Although there was no blood around, I have heard that in many car accidents, the most serious thing is the absence of blood. My vision began to blur, my throat tightened, and a chill rose from the soles of my feet. The young male model Robert was trembling beside him, crying, "What should I do? Sister, I hit someone. Call an ambulance. Hurry." I almost yelled. The young male model Robert frantically took out his cell phone, his fingers trembling so much that he could hardly press the correct number. I squatted beside Mark, looking at his pale face, feeling mixed emotions. Although we usually butt heads with each other, I never wanted anything to happen to him. "Mark, please don't die," I murmured, my fingers unconsciously caressing his cheek. Mark's eyelashes are very long, casting a shadow under his eyes, as if he is asleep. After being in a coma for a day, Mark finally opened his eyes. I finally felt relieved, but was also filled with anger. I stood by the bed, glaring at him with my hands on my hips. Do you think you're too old? Why did you suddenly rush out? Do you know you almost scared me to death? If anything happens to you, Halfway through my sentence, I suddenly choked. The scene of guarding the hospital bed last night came to my mind uncontrollably. I held his cold hand and counted his heartbeats over and over again, fearing that his heart would suddenly stop beating. Mark didn't talk back like he usually does. He slowly sat up from the bed, his white hospital gown hanging loosely on his shoulders, revealing his delicate collarbone. His eyes were a little confused, and suddenly, he slowly approached me. Before I could react, he buried his head in my chest and took a deep breath. Huh? My whole body froze, and I felt all the blood in my body rushing to my cheeks. His hair rubbed against my chin, giving me a tingling sensation. What are you doing? My fingers unconsciously gripped the railing of the bed. Sister, you smell so good. His voice was soft, with a hint of coquettishness. I like you so much. Elder sister? I am 3 days older than Mark, and this fact has been like a thorn in Mark's heart for 25 years. I remember when I was 6 years old, I proudly showed him my household registration booklet. Look. I'm 3 years older than you, you have to call me sister. Mark ran home angrily, crying and asking his family to re-register his household registration, but failed. Since that day, the word sister became a taboo for him. He would get angry whenever the word was mentioned. Now, he actually calls me sister? Something's wrong. Didn't the doctor say it was just a mild concussion? Why does he look like an idiot? I subconsciously took a step back, but he grabbed my wrist. His palms were burning hot, the warmth coming through my skin and making my heart skip a beat. Sister, don't go. His eyes were wet, like a puppy that was abandoned by fear. I feel dizzy, can you stay with me? I suppressed my panic, pointed at my nose, and asked tentatively, what did you call me? Sister. He blinked and his tone was so innocent that it made my scalp tingle. My eyes went dark and I almost lost my balance. I took a deep breath and continued to ask, then, what is my name? He tilted his head, as if thinking, and then said with a smile, Sister, why are you so stupid that you don't even know your own name? I was completely speechless, and the uneasiness in my heart became more and more obvious. I pointed at him and asked, what's your name? His expression suddenly became confused and his brows furrowed. My name is, what's my name? Doctor. I couldn't bear it any longer and shouted hurriedly. A few minutes later, doctors and nurses rushed in. I pointed at Mark and said quickly, Doctor, he seems to have something wrong with his brain. The doctor began to give Mark various examinations. Mark held my hand tightly, his eyes full of dependence. Sister, who are they? I'm so scared. I held my forehead and said, Mark, I'm so scared when you do this. After the doctor finished the examination, his expression was a little serious. From the current situation, Mr. Mark may have temporary memory confusion and cognitive impairment, which is one of the common symptoms after concussion. How long will it take to recover? The doctor shook his head. It's hard to say, it could be a few days or a few months, we need to observe. I turned my head to look at Mark. He was smiling at me, with a heartless look on his face. When I stepped into the ward again, Mark saw me and his eyes lit up instantly. He shouted at me with a smile, Wife, you're back. Ah? I was stunned. How did my sister become my wife in the time it took me to go out for a meal? I glared at him fiercely, my tone full of warning. Mark, I'm not your wife, don't shout. I didn't yell. He looked innocent and turned to the side. Mom, am I right? Only then did I notice that Mark's mother Jenny was standing in the corner of the ward. She held a glass of water in her hand and looked at me with a smile, the wrinkles at the corners of her eyes smoothed out. Yes, Linda is your wife. Godmother, you. I opened my mouth, but didn't know what to say. Linda. Come here with your godmother. Jenny put down the water cup and pulled my wrist and walked out without saying anything. Her palms were warm, but they made me feel uneasy. We walked all the way to the stairwell, and Jenny let go of my hand, her tone still gentle. Linda, I checked the surveillance camera in the parking lot. My heart tightened, and I instantly felt guilty. Godmother, I didn't mean it. I didn't expect him to suddenly rush out. Jenny's eyes were red and her voice was choked. I know you didn't mean it. But Mark has lost his memory. He doesn't even remember me. Only when I showed him the household registration book did he believe that I was his mother. I tried to comfort her, but my voice got smaller and smaller. The doctor said it's only temporary, and he will recover slowly. Jenny wiped away her tears, her voice trembling, but the doctor also said that he doesn't know when he will recover. I'm really afraid that he will stay like this forever. Woo. I remember when I was a child, my parents were often not at home, and I grew up in Mark's house. My godmother is very nice to me, even better than she is to Mark. Seeing her crying so sadly, I felt even worse. I gritted my teeth and said, Godmother, don't cry, I will be responsible. Woo, how can you be responsible? You can't always stay by his side until he recovers, right? I'll go with you. I blurted out, regretting it the moment I said it, but I couldn't take it back. Really? Jenny stopped crying instantly and her eyes lit up. Really? I nodded helplessly. Jenny put on a smile again and took my hand cheerfully. I knew you were the best, Linda. Your godmother loves you well. I'll leave Mark to you now. After saying that, she turned around and walked away. Her steps were very relaxed, as if she had dropped some burden. At night, I was lying on the bed playing with my mobile phone when I suddenly heard the sound of the door being gently pushed open. When I looked up, Mark appeared in my room. He must have just finished a shower. He was only wearing a pair of underwear and his hair was still wet. Drops of water slid down his collarbone and meandered all the way to his abdominal muscles. I took a quick glance and couldn't help but sigh in my heart, this guy has a really good figure. The abdominal muscles are clearly defined and the mermaid line is clearly visible. My eyes involuntarily moved downwards, ahem. It's a bit scary even through the fabric. I felt my nose getting hot, so I quickly looked away. You, put on your clothes and go back to your room. But Mark acted as if he didn't hear me. He walked straight to my bed, lifted the quilt and crawled in. He leaned close to my back and put his arms around my waist. I could even feel the heat from his body, which made my body hot as well. But the instigator still looked innocent. Wife, let's sleep together. He leaned close to my ear with an innocent look on his face, and his warm breath echoed in my eardrum, making it tingle and numb. I couldn't help but shrink back, with disgust in my tone. You hit your head and made yourself stupid, how can you still do it? Go back to your room and stop making trouble. He turned over and pressed me under him, looking at me with sparkling eyes, and I stared back at him. Suddenly, Mark stuck out his tongue and gently licked my lips. What are you doing? I was furious and my heart was pounding. He leaned down, his lips entangled with mine, kissing me deeply and urgently. After a long time, just when I felt that I was about to die, he finally let go of my lips and started leaving small kisses on my collarbone. My body was getting hotter and hotter, and his breathing was getting heavier. I felt that he was ready to go, and I couldn't help but close my eyes, feeling silently expectant. But after waiting for a long time, he did not take the next step. I quietly opened my eyes, only to find Mark standing there in a daze, muttering to himself, what should I do next? The TV turned off the lights at this point. I turned over, pressed him under me, and regained the initiative. The dim light of the bedside lamp shone on his face, making his facial features look even more profound. Mark's breathing was a little rapid, so I took his hand and untied his shoulder straps. His fingers trembled slightly, as if they were burned, and he wanted to pull them back, but I held them tightly. Don't be afraid, I'll teach you. I continued to hold his hand and slowly moved down. When his fingertips slid down from my waist, my whole body froze completely and my ears turned red as if they were about to bleed. I smiled, leaned close to his ear, gently bit his earlobe, and exhaled, just like that, deep, in, shallow, out, understand? Mark suddenly pushed me away, huddled in the corner of the bed, his eyes panicked, his tone nervous. You. Don't come over here. I was stunned, looked down at my nightgown which had been pulled down to my waist, and then looked at his undying expression, and a nameless anger surged in my heart. At this time, he actually asked me not to come over. I rushed towards him viciously and pulled his pants hard. We pulled at each other, and finally I got tired and gave up. Mark stopped struggling. He closed his eyes tightly, clenched his fists, and looked like a fish waiting for me to do whatever I wanted. And I was thinking seriously, even if I really took off my pants, what should I do next? Waiting online, so anxious. Mark looked at me without moving for a long time and couldn't help but open his eyes. The corners of his eyes were red and wet. He twisted his body and said in a hoarse voice, "Wife, I feel uncomfortable. I feel bad too. It's all because of the porn I watched before. I always get tired after the beginning and never see the key points. You only regret not having enough tablets when you need them." I suddenly took out my cell phone to look for it, and after a long time, I found some on the edges but not in the middle. All the men with abs were busy mopping the floor. The more I watched, the happier I became, and I completely forgot my original intention. I don't know when, but I fell asleep. In the middle of the night, half asleep and half awake, I always felt like something was pressing against me. I tried my best to move, but was picked up by a pair of big hands. Those hands wandered over my body with a burning warmth. I was so sleepy that I couldn't even open my eyes, so I slapped those hands away and muttered, "Xiaomi, stop it. I want to sleep." Woo. The other person moaned and then started to nibble on my mouth. It's so annoying to disturb people's dreams. I bit back hard until the other person let go in pain. I turned over and fell asleep again, contentedly. The next day, when I opened my eyes, what I saw was a magnified face. Mark was lying beside my bed, staring at me without blinking. There were dark circles under his eyes, as if he had been up all night, and there was a red and swollen spot at the corner of his mouth, making him look disheveled. Seeing me wake up, a trace of grievance flashed in his eyes, and his voice was hoarse. "Wife, are you awake?" I was so scared that I subconsciously reached out and pushed him. He obviously didn't expect my sudden attack. He leaned back and the back of his head hit the bed heavily with a dull thud. "Ah!" He cried out in pain, his eyes rolled back, and he fainted again. Finished. His brain wasn't working very well because of the last car accident, so what should he do now? I hurriedly called an ambulance and sent him to the emergency room. After the examination, the doctor frowned and told me that Mark had another concussion, and it was more serious than the last car accident and he needed to be hospitalized for observation. My heart sank when I heard this. I wondered if he would become even more stupid. I couldn't get through to my godmother on the phone, so I could only help him complete the hospitalization procedures first. After all, both concussions were caused by me. I can't just run the accident. But who would have thought that after Mark woke up, he became even more shy. He said he would not let the nurse get close to him under any circumstances. In desperation, the task of accompanying the child fell on me. But I never thought it would be so difficult. Mark has become very nervous since he hit his head. He always says there are ghosts in the hospital and he is afraid to sleep alone at night. Every midnight, he would sneak onto my bed. A tall guy, over 1.80 meters tall, insisted on squeezing into a small accompanying bed with me. There was no way he could sleep well. What's even more troublesome is that this guy is always restless when sleeping at night. His hands seemed to be equipped with automatic cruise control. No matter how I slapped or swung them, they would always accurately locate at a certain point in the end. It made me so angry that a big blister appeared at the corner of my mouth. Not only did he not let me sleep well at night, he also didn't let me go during the day. "This porridge is too bland and tasteless." Mark frowned and threw the spoon back into the bowl, his tone full of disgust. I took a deep breath and repeated to myself several times, "Don't be angry, don't be angry. If you get angry you will get sick and no one can help you." Then I managed to suppress my anger. I pushed the bun in front of Mark and said, "I'll buy you a pack of salt tomorrow. You can eat this first." He glanced at the buns. "I don't like meat-filled ones." I patiently handed over the soy milk. "Then you drink the soy milk." He pouted, "I want to drink milk." I gritted my teeth, peeled the boiled egg and handed it to him, "Then eat the egg." "I don't like boiled eggs." "Mark, I gave you face, right?" I finally couldn't help it and raised my hand, pretending to hit him. Mark immediately held his head tightly and hid towards the corner of the bed. "Ah. Wife, my head hurts." I withdrew my hand reluctantly, feeling powerless in my heart. What a bastard. I sighed, reached out to the table, and put away the breakfast. "Wait, I'll buy you some new ones." When I returned to the ward with breakfast again, the scene in front of me made me stop in my tracks. There was a new person next to Mark's bed, with a thin waist and plump buttocks with big waves. I recognized her immediately. She was the little model he was hugging in the bar that day. The little model was bending over, revealing her cleavage, holding a bowl of porridge in her hand, and her voice was sickeningly sweet. Mark, you are such a fool, why are you in the hospital? Luckily, my friend is a nurse here, otherwise I wouldn't have known you were in the hospital. She scooped a spoonful of porridge with a spoon, blew it gently on her lips, and carefully handed it to Mark. This is the porridge I made specially for you. Try it and see if it suits your taste. I stood at the door, and the breakfast bag in my hand suddenly became heavy. Logically, I should be happy. Someone is rushing to take care of Mark, and I can finally feel relieved. But I don't know why, I felt inexplicably irritated, as if something was blocking me. I tried hard to suppress the discomfort in my heart and turned around to leave. At this moment, Mark's voice suddenly came, "Wife. You are finally back, I am starving to death." His voice was full of excitement, as if he had been waiting for me for a long time. I paused, and although my face remained expressionless, I stepped into the ward honestly. I even felt secretly delighted. The little model heard the voice and turned to look over. The moment her eyes met mine, her expression changed drastically, her eyes full of hostility. "Are you his wife?" I smiled coldly, didn't answer, walked straight to her, pushed her away with my butt, turned my head and said to Mark, "How many times have I told you not to eat strangers' things? What if it's poisoned? You." The little model was so angry that her face turned blue and she glared at me viciously. Suddenly, as if she had thought of something, she hurriedly grabbed Mark's hand and said anxiously, "Mark, don't be fooled by her. She is not your wife." Mark frowned, pushed her hand away, and said in a cold and hard tone, "I hate you, you actually scolded my wife, get out." The little model bit her lip, looked at Mark aggrievedly, and cried, "Mark. I'm Brittany, have you really forgotten me?" Mark seemed not to hear me. He stretched out his hand in front of me and said aggrievedly, "Wife, wash your hands. I am not clean anymore, woo-woo." I glanced at the blue-faced little model next to me and stuffed her thermos into her hand. "What are you still doing here? Get out of here." The little model was reluctant. "Don't be complacent. Mark will remember it sooner or later." I sneered, "You haven't remembered it yet, have you?" The little model finally couldn't bear it anymore, she covered her face and ran out crying. Before leaving, he didn't forget to say, "I will come again tomorrow." I looked at her embarrassed back, but I didn't feel any joy of victory in my heart. Instead, I felt a little irritated. I glared at Mark and said, "Mr. Mark is quite charming. Even when he is in the hospital, someone comes to serve him." Mark looked at me innocently, "Wife, I just want you to serve me." I was so angry at his behavior that I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I handed him the breakfast in my hand and said, "Eat it and stop being picky." He took the breakfast and ate it obediently, but he kept glancing at me secretly, as if he was afraid that I would be angry. Afterwards, I contacted the hospital and it turned out that the little model's friend had just come for internship a few days ago. She tipped off the little model and that was why she came to the hospital. The hospital has issued a notice of criticism to the nurse. In order to prevent the little model from bothering me again, I arranged for Mark to be discharged from the hospital. I'm not jealous, I just find it troublesome, really. As soon as we got home, Mark grabbed my hand and said, "Honey, I'm so sticky. I want to take a shower." Then I remembered that he had not taken a bath during the 3 days in the hospital. But, this can't be blamed on me, right? He refused to let the nurse touch it, so let it stink. I took 2 steps back in disgust and pointed at the bathroom door, "Go by yourself." But he refused to let go, his eyes were clear, and he acted coquettishly to me, "Wife, I need you to help me wash. On TV, husbands and wives always take a bath together." I rolled my eyes and ignored him. Upon seeing this, he immediately covered his head with his hands, his eyes red, and his voice a little weak. "Ah. My head is still so dizzy. What if I fall?" I was so annoyed by his behavior. If he gets a 3rd concussion, I really can't be held responsible. So, I sighed helplessly, "Okay, you want me to help you wash, right? You go to the bathroom and wait." He immediately showed a triumphant smile, his eyes shining. I took a steel wool from the kitchen. I hadn't taken a shower for 3 days, so of course I had to scrub it clean this time. When I returned to the bathroom, I was scared by Mark. He had stripped himself completely naked, this time without even leaving his underwear on. His 8 abdominal muscles were tightly stretched, and there was not a trace of fat around his waist. My eyes unconsciously moved downwards, and I immediately took a breath. Wow! What a huge iPhone 16 Pro Max! My lower abdomen felt hot and my nose started to feel hot too. I quickly covered my nose with my hands and shouted in panic, "You! Who told you to take off your clothes?" Mark blinked innocently, "Wife, how can you take a bath without taking off your clothes?" My nose got even hotter, and I screamed, "Turn around. Quick!" Mark then reluctantly turned around and faced away from me. I tilted my head back and waited until the nosebleed finally stopped before I picked up the steel wool and wiped it on his back. His skin is very white and tender, and I turned all my passion into strength. I brush hard. Red marks soon appeared on Mark's back, making him look even more raw. My nose is getting hot again. How pathetic. At this moment, Mark suddenly grabbed my hand and groped under his abdominal muscles. His voice was hoarse, "Wife, wipe this too." I pulled my hand back as if I had been electrocuted, and my face instantly burned. "Mark. What are you doing?" He turned his head, his eyes wet, and his voice was a little aggrieved. "Wife, it's so uncomfortable here." I took a quick glance and it looked horrible. My hand shook and the steel wool fell directly to the ground. Mark grabbed my hand tightly and pleaded in his voice, "Wife, touch me." Scenes from the short movies I had been binging on recently flashed through my mind. I don't know how things got to this point. Originally I just wanted to help him take a bath, but in the end it turned into a frank meeting. The bathroom was filled with mist, my whole body felt limp, and my heart was pounding. But I tried to act calm and skilled. "Mark, did you get it right this time?" Mark looked innocent. "Wife, I secretly saw you watching a movie last time. First like this, then like this, deep, in, shallow, out." Huh? I froze in place, not daring to move. But he pushed it intentionally as if it was a prank. "Wife, is this the place?" I trembled all over and my voice changed. "Don't." He blinked and said innocently, "Is this the place?" Ah. I couldn't help but scream out in surprise. My whole body felt like I was hit by an electric current and my hands and feet went limp. But he still refused to let me go and continued to ask, "Isn't it right? Be gentle." I bit my lip, my voice already sounding like tears. "After 2 hours. Mark, stop." I collapsed in his arms, without even the strength to raise my hands. But he looked at me with an aggrieved expression and said in a hoarse voice, "Wife, it's standing at attention again." I wanted to cry but I couldn't, just let it rest for a while. It doesn't listen to me. He lowered his head and rubbed my neck, with a hint of coquettishness in his tone. "I really don't want it anymore." My voice was so hoarse that I could hardly speak. "My toes are curled up and I have no strength left." Another 2 hours passed. Mark finally let me go. He carried me out of the bathroom, gently placed me on the bed, and held me in his arms. "Wife, I love you so much." I was too lazy to pay attention to him. I was so tired and my bones were falling apart. I lay in bed, sneezing several times in a row and having a stuffy nose. The culprit, Mark, was sitting on the bed with a cup of hot milk in his hand. "Wife, why are you glaring at me?" He blinked and said in an aggrieved tone, "Come, drink some hot milk, you will feel better." I took the milk and took a sip. The warm feeling slid down my throat, slightly relieving the discomfort of my stuffy nose. But I always felt something was wrong. Mark, is he really stupid or just pretending to be stupid? His behavior last night didn't seem like he had amnesia. Mark. I put down the cup, stared into his eyes, and said seriously, "Are you playing dumb?" Mark blinked and said innocently, "Wife, how could I pretend to be stupid? I'm really not stupid." I narrowed my eyes, thinking about how to test him. Suddenly, I thought of the thing he hated to eat the most, coriander. He wrinkles his nose whenever he smells cilantro, let alone eats it. When I thought of this, I instantly felt energized. I got up from the bed. "I'll make you breakfast today, what do you want to eat?" His eyes lit up and he smiled like a child. "I like everything my wife makes." "Then I'll make you your favorite sandwich." I smiled and turned into the kitchen. In the kitchen, I deliberately put a big handful of cilantro in the bread and spread a thick layer of cilantro sauce on it. After I finished, I walked up to him with the plate and said with a smile, "Come, have a taste." Mark took a big bite without hesitation, chewed it a few times, swallowed it, and looked up at me and smiled. "Thank you, wife." I asked tentatively, "Is it delicious?" "Delicious." He nodded and took another bite. "Everything my wife cooks is delicious." I became even more confused. Was I really overthinking? I decided to give it one more try. I sat next to him and said casually, Mark, I've seen a bag recently. Can you transfer some money to me? He put down his sandwich, took out his phone, and said without hesitation, okay. How much do you want, wife? All of it. I stared into his eyes and said word by word. He was stunned for a moment, then he laughed, okay, give it all to my wife. After he finished speaking, he started to operate, and the notification sound of the money arriving on my phone never stopped. He literally transferred all the money to me. My heart trembled, and I looked up at him. Did you really turn it all around? He nodded, his eyes incredibly gentle. If my wife wants it, I'll give it to her. Anyway, what's mine is yours. I was touched, so I excitedly snatched the sandwich from his hand and said, let's go. Mark, let's transfer the ownership. He also smiled more brightly, okay, I'll listen to my wife. Looking at the extra property under my name, I firmly believed that Mark was absolutely stupid. My best friend Kelly broke up with her boyfriend and asked me to go to a bar to have fun. I didn't want to go at first, but I couldn't resist her nagging. The lights in the bar were dim and the music was deafening. I sat in the booth, holding a glass of juice in my hand, feeling uninterested. My best friend Kelly was a little drunk and pulled me aside to complain about her ex-boyfriend. I nodded perfunctorily but couldn't help but be distracted. My mind is full of Mark. What is he doing at home now? Will Mark fall on his head again? Or, is Mark thinking about me too? As I was daydreaming, suddenly a familiar figure came into my sight. It was the 188 centimeters tall male model Robert from last time. He was wearing a tight black t-shirt, revealing his strong biceps, and walked towards me. He smiled at me and said, Sister, we meet again. I smiled politely, but I felt nothing in my heart. I used to think he was very handsome, but now that I'm used to seeing Mark's face, I actually feel that he is not good enough. Sure enough, aesthetics is something that will change. The young male model Robert didn't seem to notice my coldness. He sat next to me and started chatting with me. I dealt with it absent-mindedly, but my mind was full of Mark. Just then, the cell phone suddenly rang. I looked down and saw the word Mark clearly displayed on the screen. My heart suddenly tightened for no apparent reason, as if I had done something wrong. I'm going to answer a phone call. I said this hastily, not caring about the reactions of my best friend Kelly and the young male model Robert, and quickly found the corridor next to the bar's bathroom. It'll be quieter here. I took a deep breath and answered the phone. Wife, where are you? Mark's voice came through the phone, with an inexplicable emotion, as if he was suppressing something. My heart tightened, and I lied subconsciously, I'm at my best friend Kelly's house. She broke up, and I'm here to keep her company. There was silence on the other end of the phone for a few seconds. I don't know if it was my illusion, but Mark's voice sounded a little colder. Really? When will you be back? Later. I'll go back when she's in a better mood. I answered as if I was being nonchalant, but I felt uneasy inside, as if I was cheating on someone. Okay, then be careful. He said and hung up the phone. I breathed a sigh of relief and was about to turn back, but I bumped into a strong chest. This feels familiar. I looked up and froze in place for a moment. Mark was standing in front of me. He stopped smiling and just looked at me coldly. Mark, what a coincidence. I stammered, feeling very nervous. His voice was terribly low and contained a hint of sarcasm. Your friend Kelly's house is so lively. I opened my mouth and was about to explain when a familiar voice interrupted. Sister. I turned around and almost fainted. What kind of sure field is this? I don't know when the young male model Robert came over and was standing behind me with a bright smile on his face. He put his hand on my shoulder and said in a friendly tone, Didn't your little me do a backflip? I want to go and see it tonight. Mark's eyes became colder. He stared at the little male model Robert, and said through gritted teeth, Who is he? My mind went blank, and I spoke with a trembling voice, He is my cousin. The young male model Robert was stunned for a moment, obviously not reacting. But Mark's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He sneered and turned away. I panicked and tried to catch up. Mark suddenly stopped. I was caught off guard and bumped into his back. Just as I was rubbing my nose, he turned around abruptly, carried me on his shoulders, and strode out. Ah. Mark. What are you doing? I screamed and struggled to get down. However, he completely ignored me and walked on. People all around me gave me mocking looks, and I kept my head down, wishing I could find a hole in the ground to crawl into. Along the way, Mark didn't say a word, his jawline was tense, and his whole body gave off an aura that kept strangers away. When we arrived at the basement, Mark threw me into the back seat of the car without mercy. Then he leaned over, put one hand on the seat, pinched my chin with the other hand, and stared at me dangerously. "Linda, do you think I'm easy to fool?" I put my arms around his neck and quickly touched his lips. "Mark, are you not going to play dumb anymore?" He was stunned for a moment, then his eyes darkened, and he lowered his head and kissed my lips hard. This kiss carried a sense of punishment, it was very domineering and strong. I could tell he wanted to kiss me to death. I was dizzy from the kiss and could only hold on to his clothes tightly and let him take what he wanted. After a long time, he finally let me go, put his forehead against mine, and said in a hoarse voice, "When did you know?" "When you were in the hospital, sending a message to your godmother late at night, asking her not to return home. And you? Because, I love you too. In this game, it is still unclear who the prey will be." Mark's eyes darkened again and he leaned down again, more fiercely this time. "There's someone, outside." I reached out to push him away. Ah. Suddenly, I felt a chill in my chest, and a fine and fragmented feeling of wetness came down all over me. "Mark, don't." I protested weakly. "The car is covered with privacy film, so you can't see. Pay attention."